Shalum, Shalum, and welcome. Welcome to the White Rose Family Channel. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Symmanayah, and this series is called In Line. Why? Because there's so much to learn, so much to receive in the coming days ahead, that each element of wisdom, of courage, of strength is lined up to reach us, to strengthen us, to make us wiser, stronger, to improve our worship and obedience to the Almighty Father. In this segment of In Line, I want to bring up the topic of table conditions. Table conditions. Have you ever eaten at a table? And some of you might take this for granted because you eat at a table a lot, or maybe when you was a child, or at a restaurant, somewhere during your lifetime, you may have experienced eating at a table. Possibly. If not, let me mention the environment where you sat down or stood up to eat. What were the conditions like? Was it wet and windy? Or was it dry? Was the area well lit? If it was a table or something you set your food on, what was the surface like? Was it clean or dirty? Was it congested with stuff? Was it filled with food? Was it lacking something to drink? Table conditions. You might say, okay, well, what does this have to do with anything? I will submit the case that as we function, we take so much for granted. And if we begin to pay attention to the details, we could very well make a difference of how we respond to the conditions we face, whether it's good or bad. When we think of table conditions, one could relate it to an eating place, somewhere where you sit down to eat or stand up to eat. It could also be related to spreadsheets with numbers and formulas and tables or more. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, did you do a shift on me? I once taught a class and I mentioned the term files. And I was talking about paper files that would go into a metal file cabinet. And so some of the individuals of certain ages knew right away I was talking about files that you put in a folder and put in a paper cabinet. Some that were of younger age or more astute to technology believed I was talking about files on a computer, a laptop, or a phone. So when I say tables, spreadsheets have tables. So some could say when I say table conditions, I'm talking about spreadsheets that have numbers and formulas. But for the sake of time and for the sake of focus, I want to navigate or pivot to talking about eating places, eating placement. Things to consider as it relates to eating, such as cleanliness, organization, content, presentation, diners or the people who are eating. What are the conditions like at our tables? And I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, there's the literal tables and there's the spiritual tables. And believe it or not, when we begin to pay attention to details, we can find ourselves on track for learning the wisdom, the maturity and strength to navigate through all the challenges that we're facing. You see, with all the distractions, we are stepping into challenges, civil unrest, economic challenges, to say the least, chaos, diseases, and famine. We are stepping into these matters recklessly. And I will present the case why table conditions from an eating perspective could contribute towards us thinking about how to respond to all that I just mentioned that is erupting in these end times. You see, even in the simplest things, we can learn something spiritual that makes us strong and wise. Make no mistake, O Yashar'al, as end times ramp up, the need to identify the wise ones, the disciplined ones, will increase. Those who are discerning of the spirit of the voice of the Almighty Father Yahuah, the desire to know these individuals will increase. Let's take a look at Psalm 23:5. And I want to unpack this in a way that may have never been unpacked before. Maybe so, maybe not. You be the judge, oh, listen to these words. Psalm 23:5 say, you spread before me a table in the face of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. One verse, simple as a verse. One could just glaze over it and just look at it and don't think it's not much to unpack. It is important to know why table conditions must be recognized, for they can influence our behavior. Table conditions. My brothers and sisters, I submit it is necessary to know how to act in the face of our enemies, especially at the table when preparing to eat. You see, if we don't know any better, our eating habits could seem barbaric to some, unlearned to others, uppity to others, snobbish to others. It can trigger perceptions and opinions of one another, distracting us from just enjoying a meal. So knowing how to act at the table will vary depending on one's training, environment, or culture. Let me continue. Psalms 23:5, there was a placement. Notice, however, that our Yahuwah's placement was not without his anointing. You see, he said, he prepared my table. He places us in the midst of conditions. But it is not without being equipped with his anointing. He said that the Almighty Father anointed his head with oil. It was so much anointing that it caused the cup to run over. Let us therefore take heed when the Almighty Yahuah places us where he wants us to be. We should expect the presence of his anointing. To detect his presence, we must be prayerful at all times and seek to discern what is expected. How many of us have ever went to a table, talked about it in a good way or a bad way? There are scriptures that use water to represent the word of the Almighty Yahuah. There are scriptures that also use bread of life to represent Yahusha, Yahuwah's word. Come, let's take a look at them. If we're talking about water and food, will they not be connected to table? I'll present that case to you, my brothers and sisters. You see, in John 4:13 and 14, beyond the literal, we discover something spiritual. For here Yahusha answered and said to her, everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life. Could this be describing that anointing that we receive at the tables, at the positions we find ourselves in each day? Could that anointing be the wisdom of the word of Yahuwah, stirring within us, guiding us through all circumstances, delivering us from all strongholds? Everlasting water is the everlasting word of the Almighty Father. Notice that in Ephesians 5:25 through 27, it reads, husbands, love your wives as Messiah also loved the assembly and gave himself for it, in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. Notice that it said washing of water by the word. So by the word of Yahuwah, no matter what the table condition, Is it possible under his anointing to be washed, cleansed, made better? It say, in order to present it to himself splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any of this sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless. You see, regardless of whatever state we are in physically, my brothers and sisters, let us look to our redemption and our Redemptor. Let us look towards Abba Yahuah, whose word come to us in Yahusha's name. Come with me to John 6:35. Here it reads, and Yahusha said to him, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not get hungry at all, and he who believes in me shall not get thirsty at all. We could stop at physical and natural thirst and hungry, but if we stop there, we will fret, we will perish in our unbelief if we allow the stronghold to take effect. But if we focus on he who is the Almighty One, we'll know that there's much more to our lives than these earthen vessels. I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, the bread of life and everlasting water comes to us in Abba Yahuah's anointing. His anointing, my brothers and sisters, the Almighty Father Yahuah equips us in more ways than we can imagine to withstand table conditions. Now I'm speaking of tables in a sense of wherever we find ourselves, wherever position we find ourselves, where we eating and drinking, literally and spiritually. The spiritual eating and listening and drinking is recognizing the words that come to us, recognizing the actions that are before us. Are they reflective of the bread of life? Are they reflective of everlasting drink? Or is it something else? My brother, my sister, consider that we receive armor by the Spirit of Yahuah, the Spirit of the Most High Yahuah, whose word comes to us in Yahusha's name. Did you not know he provided us with armor to withstand whatever table conditions we face? Now, sure, I could say wherever position, wherever we find our feet landing, feet landing. You see, Yashar'al, as end times ramp up, movement will come. We will not be in the same place that we're in now. Have you begun to ask yourself, where am I headed? With whom? With what? What will the conditions be? Literal and spiritual. What armor? What does the Almighty Father equip us with as we face these different table conditions? Although we think of armor for battle, I believe sometimes there are fights at the table. Let's look at the armor provided so that we can get through the battles, the wars, that we can navigate through the confusion that is ramping up, O Yashar'al. Come with me to Ephesians 6, chapter 10 through 13. Ephesians 6, 10 through 13, for it reads, for the rest, my brothers and sisters, be strong in the Master and in the mightiness of his strength. Put on the complete armor of the Almighty One, for you have power to stand against the schemes of the devil. Because we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against authorities, against the world rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual matters of wickedness in heavenlies. Because of this, take up the complete armor of the Almighty One, so that you have the power to withstand in the wicked day, and having done all to stand. Do you believe end times are showing us wicked days? Look again, O Yashar'al, and stay with me. For there are battles at the table. There are struggles we will face. But the Almighty Father gives us strength and equip us with spiritual armor It continues on in Ephesians 6 chapter. Verse 14 through 20 says, stand then, having girded your waist with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having fitted your feet with the preparation of the good news of peace, the good news that Yahusha is within you. And following him will lead us through all conditions. And we will have that peace knowing that we belong to him and that he is in us in spite of the table conditions. It say, above all, having taken up the shield of belief, which you shall have power to quench all the burning arrows of the wicked one. Not fretting, not worrying, my brothers and sisters, stepping into obedience to the Almighty Father. The shield of belief, knowing that it says without belief it's impossible to please him. So in our desire to please him, O Yashar'al, let us know that it is a shield that helps us to get through all table conditions, all positions that we face. Take also the helmet of deliverance and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of the Almighty One, praying at all times with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, watching in all perseverance and supplication for all the set-apart ones. Also for me, that a word might be given to me in the opening of my mouth, to be bold in making known the secret of the good news, for which I am an envoy in chains, that in it I might speak boldly as I should speak. Sure, the literal is Shalum talking to brothers and sisters at Ephesus. If you look at the precept upon precept, you see the literal. But if you look to discover that everlasting water, that spiritual meaning, the life and what can be learned, you will see it applies to us even to this day. Table conditions is something we should be mindful of daily. I believe it is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing that Abba Yahuah choose to use water and bread to demonstrate how the table conditions we face are manageable. We see our forefather David saying, he prepareth my table in the midst of my enemies. But he did not leave David empty. He anointed his head with oil. His cup flowed over. Do you not believe this can happen with us as we find ourselves in the midst of challenging times? Yashar'al, O Yashar'al. End times will bring transitions, movement. What we eat and how we feed will require us to be mindful of table conditions, but not lose focus on the dietary laws, knowing what foods are acceptable to eat. Not lose focus on examining all things, including the liquids that we drink. Not overindulging in strong drink and wine. And I said overindulging to where it causes us to stumble and fall, and it distorts our judgment. Table conditions, O Yashar'al. Let us look at the things that are around us. Let us look at how we are positioned and what is expected of the one in the mirror, the brother, the sister, the one in fellowship. Yashar'al will gather, my brothers and sisters. In each day there is something to learn. Be mindful, my brother, my sister, my family, table conditions. Be mindful of the literal and challenges we face in the spirit, for it is important. My brother, my sister, my family, remember these words in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 16 through 18. 2 Corinthians 4, 16 through 18 said, therefore we do not lose heart, but even if our outward man is perishing, the inward man is being renewed day by day. Could that be, O Yashar'al, that anointing that makes our cup runneth over? The fruit, the evidence of that anointing is being renewed day by day. They say, for this slight momentary pressure is working for us a far more exceeding and everlasting weight of esteem, We are not looking on what is seen, but on what is not seen. For what is seen passes away, but what is not seen is everlasting. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, my brother, my sister. If I said anything that encourages you, that motivates you, that strengthens you, using the word table conditions, are you now ready to appreciate the armor that you've received? Are you ready to recognize that anointing to get you through the table conditions? Are you ready to rejoice and praise and thank the Almighty Father for taking you through? Rise up, set apart family, and become mindful of the table conditions, lest we find ourselves taking things into our body or minds that are not fruitful, that are not beneficial. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, that's it. That's all I have for now. Reflect on these words. Share, like, subscribe. Help contribute towards building up things of encouragement. If indeed you receive something of encouragement that presses you closer to the Almighty Father, that improves your worship, my worship, and the worship of those who watch and witness how you are affected by the things you learn in set apartness. Pray, O Yashar'al, discern and acknowledge the presence of the Almighty Father as he fulfills his promises to us. My name is Symmanayah, and I thank you for listening. I thank you for pursuing set apartness. And my prayer is that each of us grow in discerning what must be done. Let us not take for granted all the promises that the Almighty Father made and the things that are unfolding that strengthen us to navigate through these trying times. On that note, I end by saying, stay tuned. There is more to come. Shalom. Shalom, my brother, my sister, my family.